Welcome to More Than Words podcast. This is Liz.
I don't know what's going on, but you froze, I think. And I was like, I guess as you're speaking. Hey, everybody. Welcome to More Than Words.
My introduction didn't come out. I was so excited too in my introduction. I was like, welcome everybody to More Than Words. This is Liz. And then it goes,
This is Liz. This is what I saw. I don't know if it was me or our internet, but I just was like, so that was a little bit of a scary movie. So listen, welcome to More Than Words. If you heard what you heard, if you didn't, and you saw this freeze that I just saw on the screen, then you're probably like, what is going on here? Listen, we're here. You know who we are. You know, Liz, clearly with this. What happened there? It was like a frozen moment and your mouth was open and you had this look. And I was like, is she okay? She all right?
And also, I'm not going to edit that out. Okay, buddy, you better leave that intro in because it was definitely uniquely me. This week, I'm embracing my uniquely me. I had a call with somebody, and I know you're going to get into your auntie moment, but I had a call earlier this week sometime. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about brands and we were talking about more than words. And I think everybody knows that you and I both have our own coaching companies and DEI companies. So you have, can I say it? Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have ALP and I have Somos Culture. So I was having like a Somos Culture branding conversation. And I said, okay, so first, this is my 5-10-year plan. And they're like, well, what do you ultimately want to do? I said, I don't want to compromise who I am. I have found out who I am and I am uniquely me. And this is who I'm going to be. She was, I think I scared them a little bit.
Wait a minute. Was this a client call, like a prospective call or just an engagement?
No, this was an engagement. Someone was helping me on my brand. And so, I would never do that to clients. Oh gosh, no. Oh my God, can you imagine? That'd be terrible.
I was like, Liz, where did this come from? Who did you channel?
Not J-Lo? I don't know. I have no idea who I channeled, but definitely I kind of, when you so people who have high anxiety tend to, and they're perfectionists, or as I like to call myself, a recovering perfectionist. Thank you, Brene Brown, for giving me that language. So at night, I stay up and I'm like, let me think about everything that I said and who I said it to and who did I hurt and who did I offend and what wrong things that I said. It's never positive, which is really, it's a terrible state to be. So of course, this week I was like, oh gosh, this fierce, fiery, bossy Latina, I love her, but she comes out in moments that I don't know.
Listen, first of all, I don't like this self-talk. We need to have a conversation with whoever that voice is, because of all that. First of all, I used to go through that same experience where I was like, let me just, what? Either if I don't get it out in therapy and then my journal entry ain't really good, then we just gonna let that go, because my mind will be like, no, I need to go right all those wrongs, right? I want to have some good karma. Like, I've been working on myself, but my past me be like, I don't care. That happened, and I'm moving on. And I'll be like, oh no, let's be better. Let's work on being like, oh, let's be a little bit more. Let's make sure we leave space for forgiveness and patience and all those things. But sometimes I'd be like, and that just happened. And that was the end of that.
Well, and I think you and I have both really worked on ourselves a lot. We talked a lot about that in our first episode on how much work we've done. I mean, there comes a point where yes, I do think that we all should work on ourselves and we all have things that we could improve on. But there comes a point where sometimes we just have to just sit and be, unless you're a jerk, right? Unless you don't have empathy or compassion or, any kind of those bare minimum things. If you're not meeting the bare minimum, then let's talk about that. But I think you and I are very empathetic, very compassionate, very we are always there for people. So at some point we just need to sit where we're at and we are okay. We are good.
So for anybody listening, I know my family and friends is like, well, she wasn't always like that. Let's be clear. But
I wasn't either.
listen, I remember my first workplace talk, like, when you get your performance review, they were like, yeah, so, I hope you're open to this feedback, which is about to be something crazy, right? Like, well, why you been holding on and not tell me every day, which was a part of that personality for sure, myself. But then it was like, you know what, Shara, in the workplace, I think, we appreciate you being so blunt and honest, but, sometimes you have to tailor it to your audience, AKA stop talking to people crazy. Like, I didn't know, like, when people would say something, and I wasn't being rude, but I would just be like, I'm not sure if does that make sense here? Like, I would say something that in my mind, I'm probably ideating, or I would just be very direct in that or something like that. Like, when you're first figuring out corporate world, you just don't know. You're like, I'm going to just say no. And people were like, yeah, you don't really just say no like that. You just don't get to tell people just no. It's just into me like, well, I'm not going to do that. Or I don't think that makes any sense. And I had to learn how to finesse it. So if you hear this new version, you know that I did a lot of work.
But okay, can I ask a question and then you can go into your auntie moment? Because we have a guest and it's going to be a really top.
Yeah, go ahead with this question. I'm scared. I don't want to know. I don't want to don't say it. Just let it go. Come on. Okay, go ahead. I'm ready.
So because I feel like I really know you, right? I've known you for a long time. We've known each other for 12 years, I think now.
I don't know. I wanted to give you a face to make you think about whether or not that was true or not, but I don't know. I just wanted to give you that face. Like, I don't know. You're underestimating our friendship. No, I'm just kidding. The many years of our friendship. I don't know.
The many stories of our friendship and the evolutions. Man, we could write a book. Ooh.
We really could. And just for the audience to know, I don't remember any real dates and numbers that well. So when people be like, how long have we been friends? I'll be like, and I'd be like, well, do we really want to talk about how long and how meaningful it's been? AKA, sure, I can't remember. I need time to go think. I need to go look at my phone, look at some old pictures. I need to plus or minus that number. Like, I have no clue. I mean, and sometimes I just tell people, like, I don't know your birthday. I love you. We've been friends for years. I clearly didn't put it in my phone. My bad. I love you, though. Like, I will bring you a gift.
Every day is my birthday, so there's that.
Well played.
I feel like I've taken over the auntie moment in so many ways. Like, I'm like, this is who I am, okay? And also, every day's my birthday.
No, wait, let me. Okay, so
tell me
what your question is. Let's go to the auntie moment.
I'm gonna save my question for our bias conversations. Because I think we wanted to have a conversation about not our bias. Well, everyone has biases, but we wanted to talk about biases and all that stuff. And I think that's going to be a topic in the future. So I will write my question down and I will save it. There.
Play.
I didn't actually write anything down.
Moment,
I didn't write it down.
I was like, what were you looking at? I was like, oh, it must be a long list. For those of you listening, the gestures today is in high energy. So it is a lot of movement and a lot of eye movement, arm movement, hand movement, nail movement going on. Just letting you know you're missing out if you're not looking at the video. But okay, so for aunties. So for those of you just joining us for the first time, we do auntie moments. So auntie moments are really about us talking about those moments. Like, think about your aunts, your TTs, those people that, you know those people, right? So this is going to talk about something either brave, daring, audacious, fearless, something direct in context. But this is going to be really about my age and my process of like really trying to process my age, just FYI. So listen, I'm here. I'm visiting my best friends. And I am here in New York City. We just chose, we're here in New York City. We chose a place where it had a great view to go enjoy dinner. So we were like, oh, let's go see the water. Like, boom. So like, we're here. Let's go look at the skyline. Like, we're trying to have the most, right? Like, these are our auntie hours, right? Like, we're after work, but like, we need to still get to bed because we got early morning meetings. And so we go look. The sunset is fabulous. My head is always on the swivel, right? I look over to the right, and there is a couple, literally with a life, like there's a gentleman, and then it's a woman, and they're taking this picture. So she's got the picture up, and this guy has literally what looks like a lightsaber from like Star Wars, like literally as long as the lightsaber, colored, like it's like this bronzy color that he's holding above her phone so that she could get the right lighting for this picture or this background in New York City. So long story short, I'm sitting here like,
I have so many questions.
Do you see this lifesaver? Girl, it was so long. I was like, how did he bring it here? Like, did you have a
Where did
bag?
it come from?
Your pants leg?
Does he have a holster? Like a
holster? That's what my friend said. Like, you need a holster for something. It was insane. And I said, see, this is how I know I'm getting too old. Because I'm saying, look, yeah, like, why would you carry that all the way here for that one picture? Then I noticed everybody else were like getting their selfies. So I was like, oh, let me do this too. So I'm not saying there's something wrong with it, but I was definitely curious about the level of lighting that's needed for some of these selfies because I'm clearly just been using my regular flash.
So
this is my brave moment of talking about my age vulnerability here. So please support me and be gentle.
So where did the lightsaber come from? And was the lightsaber used as a prop or does it bring him? Like I read this book recently where it's not a resource type book. It's one of those books that like it gets you out of reality. And one of the guys like carried a lightsaber because the force came to him in this. So maybe the force is with him.
The force is with him. So first of all, I had all these same questions. I didn't get to the force question because I'm really new to the Star Wars life, but I'm definitely trying to enjoy that journey, right? Because this was like
immediately.
Literally,
where's your light? Where's your light? Where's your light?
Literally, I have no light. I'm in a room that just happens to have a lamp on, and it's like sunlight coming through. Like, am I need to be better at this? Like, for real. I just didn't think that people were bringing ring lights with them to get good selfies. It's just something else.
I have mine. But although this side's just lit, this side isn't. So I think I need to put it like in the middle somewhere. Anyways, I have done the TikTok reel with which is a song I'm not gonna sing it. It's embarrassing. But like when you put the phone there, you're like, wind's blowing. Because I like to have my J-Lo, Beyonce moments.
The fan is a plus.
I have a fan in here and I have those moments all the time.
Well, I guess it's not our traditional auntie moment because we talk about something more meaningful, but for real, I'm really contemplating right at the point where it's like, do I engage or do I observe? Because really, I kind of secretly did go out and try to find that light in, right? But it didn't. Only thing I could find was like lifesavers. I'm not gonna lie. I did not find this. I tell you, he could have used it as a sword.
That was your auntie moment right there. That you went on Amazon looking for the light, being like, "Is this something that people use?" Okay. I love your auntie moment. I would have all the same questions.
I know.
I don't see anything wrong with it, but anywho.
It's nothing wrong. It's just like, where am I? Please, audience, send me some information. Look, on our social media, let me know how y'all are experiencing like these huge transitions from when it's like, yeah, we used to take a picture with a flash on, and now it's like, I need to bring my lighting and all my props with me so I can enjoy life every day. I'm not there yet. Help me get there and let me understand what I'm potentially missing out on.
It's a commitment to carry all that stuff with you. Like
and you're in New York, so I know you was on the subway. You were on the subway.
I thought you were
like,
anyway. Yeah, that's a commitment. I think that's a commitment. Anyways, so today, thank you for that auntie moment. So today, we'll bring our guest today. Today's topic is talking about generational wealth, financial planning, financial investing. It is something that I've been studying a lot recently, especially as one of my goals is to build generational wealth. And that's a very like coined term. And, I was like, well, how do I do this? Luckily, I know someone who is in financial planning, and his name is Enrique Basañez. And I have known Enrique for a really long time. I'm trying to go back to see how long I've known him. But it was one of those moments where I reached out to Enrique. His wife and I we're almost like cousins, that we consider, they're like cousins, but not family members. This is where like my husband's like, is this a real family member, or is this like a cousin, or is this like a cousin? But he's been part of my life for a long time, and we both have seen our journeys and like kind of how we've grown in life and different things. And one of the things that has always really inspired me of Enrique, and I don't think I've ever told him this, but it's his tenacity and his strength and his hustle. And there's a roadblock, he's like, boom, get it out the way and moving forward. I want to move my family to Utah, boom, doing it. I want to move my family to Colorado, boom, I'm doing it. During the pandemic, I'm gonna do a road trip around the US, boom, we're doing it. And every year, all throughout the years, he has ideas and he follows through with them. And it's all those experiences have helped him kind of be who he is. And I also really admire who he is as a family man. He has 2 children and a wife as well too. And I've always looked to him from a family perspective and a dynamic, kind of as an example for it. So I don't think I've ever told him this. So he's probably like, what are you saying? But let's bring him on. Enrique, come on down. I told you it wasn't going to be subtle.
Hey, can you hear me?
Come on,
Yes.
Enrique. Hey!
Oh, what an intro. Wow, I'm humbled to hear all those things. I don't know if they're all true, I tried my best, but I know I sincerely appreciate the time and the opportunity to be here. And like Liz mentioned, we've known each other for such a long time. I think it's like 25 years, close to that. So happy to know you and also inspire you in some way. You inspire me as well by your journey. So I think we mutually inspire each other. So that sort of.
And we're very similar. Like our personalities are very similar. So when my cousin, who's his wife, comes on, like she's in the middle of us, she's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm talking to Enrique. Oh my God, I feel like I'm talking to Liz, because we're very
high energy. What we're trying to say is high energy.
Okay.
It's a
yes.
lot of good. I love it. I mean, first of all, I got a chance to meet Enrique, and I was like, okay, I see what Liz saying here. Like, okay, the two of them together. I was like, when y'all finish planning the rest of our lives, just let us know so that we can go ahead and just get in step with whatever you all decide. Because y'all, it's like talking fast. And it's like, yeah, we should, and we this and that. Yeah, that's this. I'm like, okay, well, let me know when you're finished. Just insert me into tell me where I need to go, please. But we're so happy that you're here, Enrique. One of the things that when we were planning this, I mean, your name, we were like, we gotta get him. And Liz like, Enrique's covered. We gotta make sure Enrique's on here when we were going to talk about wealth and equity. But before we get into that, the biggest piece, and we do this with all our guests, is the diversity wheel, right? So the diversity wheel, we shared that with you before, and we've been sharing it online with all of our listeners to basically say, this is how we wanted people to get to know not just what we do, but who are we as people and what matter to us. So you had a chance to look at the diversity wheel. What are some of your top dimensions that you think are important to kind of share in this moment?
Mine was nationality and ethnicity. So I was born and raised in Mexico, well, until the age of 15. And like the people that I look up to, is one of them is my dad. Like he is the hardest worker in the room. We worked together actually at some point in my life. But living in Mexico was sort of a great opportunity for me to grow. There wasn't a lot there wasn't a lot of financial, freedom per se or resources. So, so you had to find creative ways to find money, right? So hard work is one of the things that my dad instilled in me. And I used to wake up at 4 a.m, go work with him, and because he used to drive a bus. So just hard work all the time. That's what I saw. That's how I grew up with. And just being a Mexican, right? You've heard the term Mexican. So I have that can-do attitude. So it's actually paid off for me in opportunities that I've experienced through my journey. So being a Mexican, I always remember, like, we take a lot of pride in our hard work, whatever that is, that we get our hands on, or we're involved in terms of work. I mean, you see the boxers, some of the best boxers in the world are Mexican, right? Because we like to fight, we like to fight for the things that we want. And I think, Liz's point in terms of, like, whenever I see a roadblock or a challenge, here's tip number one for all your audience out there is there's only a limited amount of things that need to be done for a specific activity or specific challenge. And as soon as you figure that out, it's over, right? You can do it. So whether it's moving to another country, whether it's moving to Utah, whether it's moving to Colorado, whatever it is, there's only a limited amount of things you have to do, or even, this podcast. And so once you figure that out, then you can accomplish it.
Something in my spirit, Enrique wants to be competitive about that boxing piece, but I'm gonna let it go. Something in my spirit. I don't know. I felt like I needed to go. I just needed to say it out loud, but I don't know. But I'm gonna let it go. But I'm so glad that I couldn't help it. So was in my spirit, but I don't want to derail this podcast here. But I'll be honest with you. I'm so happy. When I couldn't stop smiling for those of you on the podcast, but it was something so refreshing, right? Like, we don't spend enough time just talking about, our origin story. Like, what is those things that really just kind of is at the core of who we are, that we carry every day, and where it came from. So, I was just smiling about, you being 15 and working with your dad, or getting up early in the morning. I'm like, nostalgia kind of kicks in because we don't spend a lot of time in that place. And that's why I love the diversity bill, right? It's just that chance to just step back and say, who am I, right? Like, at the basic, when all this other stuff is cleared out. So, I mean, man, okay, I'll let Liz to ask her question, because I know she was about to, but I was just like, I want my family right now.
Yeah. And you know what? Something that, like, we're trending, that we're seeing. So two things that came up for me when you were talking about your dimensions is our parents or grandparents or aunties, like people who have influenced us, is something that is like, it's part of our core, and it's something like, it's part of your story. It's definitely part of mine. I talk about Mama D all the time, which we are going to have her on here as well too, because she's my mom, and, she's my strength and the reason why I am who I am. And the other thing too is, like, the whole, like, the can-do attitude, which I'm trying to kind of find a balance between that. I can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to where, like, I get constant reminders from Shara saying, hey, have you taken time off for yourself? Like, which is funny because I do that for other people, but I don't do that for myself. And, we have a whole self-care episode too. But yes, those two things, because you just give me work and I can work all the way through it. Like, I'll be so sleepy and I'll still be working. But
no, that's true. Yeah, that is definitely something I struggle with. So if you were to ask me, so what are some of your weaknesses? How you interview people, it's like, well, I like to work a lot. I actually like to enjoy working. Now, here's the thing. If you enjoy what you do, you don't mind putting in the hours. But if you hate your job, even 2 hours doing that are going to be miserable. So it just happens. In my case, I found what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And, if I spend 14 hours, 15 hours a day, it's all for the, it's enjoyment, really. Happiness brings me a lot of happiness helping people.
So Enrique, you told us a little bit about the dimensions that make up you and who you are. What are some of the stereotypes that you have faced either in the workplace or in your personal life? And how has that impacted you and how you show up?
Yeah. And so working in different institutions, global banks, you see the stereotyping of, like, minorities are typically in the back office. They're not in the front office when it comes to corporate. So that's one of the things that when I jumped into that space, I quickly noticed, different reasons why that happens. but it's one of the things that I always sort of push through in terms of, hey, we can do any type of role that we want to do. If that's something you want to do, like jumping from back office to front office, absolutely doable. And so that's the attitude that I had, including with my team. I was very supportive in terms of career progression. So I always allowed individuals to jump from team to team to learn the business and to move up the different areas. And eventually, if they wanted to do like a front office role, more client facing, or even higher pay jobs, that they could do it. So I gave my team that confidence of doing that because I was given the same thing. So, but it is sort of stereotyping of like, minorities sort of serve in the back office operations space. But like I said, through education, through hard work, then you prove yourself and that you can do any type of role in the corporate space.
And did you ever have people that kind of helped you move you forward, or kind of like Shara talks a lot about like reaching back and helping people and reaching up when you do need help. I know that you've been that person that reaches back and helps people. You've done that. You do that all your life. But have you ever had someone that has helped you?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Actually, my boss, who was my boss for more than 10 years, he unofficially was sort of my mentor. Now he's not he's sort of an introvert. I mean, that also has its strengths, right? I'm not trying to say that introverts are in a negative way, but someone who doesn't give you a lot of feedback, but that actually gives you opportunities to grow, right? So again, he gave me my first job in the financial world, whereas a lot of people rejected me. Those people I still hang out with, and I still know up to date, and I still talk to them because they just didn't know me enough, I guess. So this person gave me the first chance to actually prove myself, and gave me additional opportunities for growth within his space, within his operational space. And even when I went to work for Goldman Sachs, for instance, he personally walked me out of the office and said, "Thank you for your service. I hope you're back, someday in the future." So that was really reassuring for me. And I came back to the same institution years later when I moved from Utah to back to Texas. And he was very happy to see me back in the office. So I keep in touch with them. I send them emails. Thank you for everything that you've given to me and your mentorship. Again, unofficially, but he's been one of the persons who I admire quite a bit. And I always thank him for giving me opportunities and also some of the feedback that has helped me progress in my career. And I pass it on to the people that I help as well.
Yeah, because I'm so glad you shared that story specifically in the detail in which you shared it, because oftentimes people take it for granted just how something so informally kind of starts with like having a connection with someone and just wanting to support them, and then really like nurturing it and maturing it into something where you have this professional relationship and mentorship. And then it can progress into advocacy and sponsorship. Oftentimes people just always want to jump to like, I want to be a mentor, I want to be a sponsor. But sometimes it's just those basic things. Like I gave a person a chance and I just followed up with them. Just kind of sometimes those differences, how important those differences can even show up in these types of relationships when you build a relationship professionally or you get a sponsor. Like how that balance is, because we all kind of gravitate naturally, let's talk about bias. Like we all kind of have similarity bias where we like, let's be in a comfortable place with people just like me, right? And so I can just feel, in my space. Like let's all have big ideas and a blast, right? But that's not where everybody thrives. So thank you for sharing that. Well, I can't wait, Enrique. So this is one of those topics that, we talk about money. And I can't wait to talk about wealth and finances. So one thing I'll say is, it took me a long time. Like growing up, we always had a budget. Like my family always talked about a budget. If you hear banging in the background, I can't control that. I'm in the city. But one of the things that did happen was like we talked about budgeting, right, and saving, right? But we didn't always talk about, or maybe they didn't always even know what to do once you had those little nest eggs, or you had to plan for something that wasn't just in your front of you, right? Like the next big thing, the baby, the school, the house need to be repaired, but like life, right? So when I got older, someone said, you're in a corporate role, you need to get a financial planner. And I was like, what? Like, somebody would share what I make with somebody? What is this person? Like, ugh. And then the first meeting I go to, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you want all this information? I don't know you. And I'm not telling you my information. But over time, I got mature in that journey, just to let you know, Enrique, I got mature enough to understand what I need to do. But I do want to, let's start with the basics, at least for the audience. What is financial planning and what is financial investing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you touched on a couple of key points there, what we call foundational items. So definitely a budget is crucial for family finances, businesses too, right? Nonprofits, a city. The United States as a whole country, right? They have a budget. You talk, financial budget, and you hear politicians talk about that. It is a crucial key component of finances in people's lives. So you hit one there, right? And then savings, right? So we are I think as a society, we are, pretty comfortable with the concept of savings. But what we don't know about is like, what do I do with those savings, right? So
I cannot put it under my mattress, right? Because that's
I actually have some clients that do have money under their mattress.
I used to. I don't trust.
Me too. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
My socks.
So I will touch on that at a later point in terms of trusting the system or not trusting the system. But financial planning is really, in simple terms. So with my clients, I look at their values, right? So we go a little bit deeper, not just goals, but actually values. What do you value the most in your life? What do you want for your family? What do you want to leave behind? Do you want to leave legacy? Do you want to accumulate wealth to leave the legacy so that your kids start in a better place in that race that we all run? So those are some of the questions that I asked my clients in terms of financial planning, but it essentially is, we look at the current situation financially, and then we map out future financial requirements for people and family, right? And then we make provisions to fill in the gaps. So current situation, what do you want to do in life? What are some of the goals that you want to hit? And then we help you put a plan together to make sure that you hit those goals, whether it's to accumulate wealth, retire with enough money so you don't run out, send your kids to college, right? Protect your income, different aspects of the financial plan. But it all has to line up and tie back to your values, because otherwise, why are you accumulating wealth for, right?
I love that, Enrique, because I don't know if you know this from our, Shara and I, when we coach people, we're both coaches, we do a whole value system, and we each have our own values. We have our values for our podcast, as well as what are the boundaries that we have. So the fact that you bring it back to values, I feel like I was getting a little bit of an advice right now for podcast free. But
right.
But it's I hadn't thought about that. What are you doing this for? Who are you doing this for? And also legacy. For me, legacy is very, very important. I do the things that I do for my children because I want a better world for them. And legacy is something that's very, very important to me. So I love that you bring the value side of it.
Absolutely.
How did you get here? How did you decide that this is what I'm going to do? Because I'm sorry, just because like, I know that like you wanted to be a pilot, and I'm probably sharing too much, but like you had all this, but I'm curious to know, like, how did you end up here? Like, why was this important for you?
Yeah, I have many aspirations and many things I've done in my life. And they all kind of tie in together, and I'll explain why. So how did I get here? 2009, that's when I first started looking into financial advising. I used to support financial advisors back then, 2009, 2010. So it's been about 11, 12 years in the making. I don't mind for something to sort of brew over 10 years. I'm patient, but also impatient in terms of like execution. But it's something that I always wanted to do, to help people with their finances. Again, it started back in 2009. Now, I was sort of new to the financial industry space, so I wanted to get some experience, some exposure, and I did that over more than 10 years. And in 2020, that's when I realized, and I made the commitment to say, hey, you wanted to do this thing 10 years ago. I think now is the time to execute and do it. Why? COVID was in full swing. I knew I could help people from the distance through, video chat. I knew I wanted to travel, but more importantly, I wanted to help people. So through 2018, 2017, I actually went through a phase of my life when I started questioning everything, questioning myself in terms of like, what do I want to do? How do I want to show up to people? What is the most important thing for me? What are my priorities? How does the family fit into place? What is love? I mean, we don't get too deep into that. How do I show love to people? So a bunch of questions that were sort of default, that we had default answers usually, right? So I started sort of stripping away and be like, okay, what is the root of why am I here? And I just, through that journey, found out that helping people gives me the greatest satisfaction. So that's why I do what I do. It just brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, when I hear so first of all, Liz put you on the spot talking about you want to be a pilot. I just want to call her out for that. Like, you wrong for that, sis. Like, why you got his business out here in these streets? He came here and talk about, well, you just don't be putting people's business out there like that.
I was just trying to share how you don't have to stick to your narrative that you've been told to stick to, that you could do whatever you want to do, right? It's just a matter of what are you capable of? What are the opportunities, and what are you willing to do? So
yeah, absolutely. So becoming a pilot, just flying airplanes, it was a dream of mine since I can remember. Probably 6-7 year old kid. We used to live right next to a military base, and there were helicopters coming in and out constantly, and I used to get on top of my roof and just see them take off. And always wanted to do that as a kid, and finally, I got to fly airplanes by myself, and even including like co-ownership of a plane. So something I wanted to do. But again, I can relate to pilots. I have some clients who are pilots, and so I can relate to them. I know what their goals are and how they think. Same thing with the RV. Right, that I drove around the United States for 6 months. I know what it takes to live in one, and I know what it takes to own one. So I can relate to people who are thinking about doing that, and I can actually give them some value. Again, outside of the financial advice, I'm more about giving the advice that I've gained, or the knowledge that I've gained over time. And so all the things that I do ultimately is to share with people and give value to people. So that's why I do it.
Well, you can't just go from
pilot, RV. I want to give the world my gifts.
I mean, we skipped
that should be a quote.
Steps.
That's going to be a hashtag.
We got to do something with that, because that one just skipped. I was like, can you tell me more about this RV? And I just want to throw it out there. I was like, well, you said co-own a plane. I said, see, I need to get better at my life right now. What am I doing where I need to be able to just throw that in there. Like, listen, I have a passion and I co-own something. That's what I need to do. That's what I need to. I'm working on that.
We co-own a podcast. I mean, it's not a plane.
It's very exciting.
That's a great accomplishment. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I see how you guys, I saw you guys at the party, and I mean, I'm so proud of both of you. You know, how you express yourselves, how you conduct this podcast, and also how you show up to people there. And I saw it in person. So very happy to be here again and get to know you guys. I've known this for a long time.
Oh, sweet. He's trying to deflect. Don't deflect, Enrique, because we was talking about you and all this wealthy coins and visions and values we was talking about. But I will say, I really do appreciate you. So that whole piece, I'm with Liz. Like when we talk about values and legacy and like I think the best story here is like, we always talk about planning for the future. Like when you're going through this process, you're thinking about what you want to leave behind or how you want to build your wealth while you're living. Like today, I mean, I think it's important to start with those things, which are like, okay, what are my values? What's important to me? And then who am I serving? Like what roles am I having that's important to me to like leave something, either create something now or leave something in once I'm not here, right? That generational wealth, which we'll get to. But it's like, you know, just putting it all together, right? Like we spend so much time about when we talk about finance, it's like the money part of it, but it is really about the living, right? Like who am I? I want to get the most out of my experience and the things that I'm dreaming about. I love the fact that we're talking about dreaming. Like what did I dream of? Like those types of things. We don't spend a lot of time talking about it. It's so tactical. It's like, what is due? Like what I gotta pay for, what's coming up. Like it's so tactical. So I'm loving this view of it.
And that's a privilege, isn't it, Cher? I mean, I'm mistaken here, but I feel like sometimes it can be perceived as a privilege, thinking about like the dreaming side of it, or at least we perceive that it is. So I love this conversation, and it shows that, you know, all three of us, we've had different dreams. We have different dreams. Cher is notorious for having visions and giving me a call and be like, I have a vision. And then this is what happens. So it is beautiful. So Enrique, when we talk about generational wealth, that is one of my goals in life. I know what it means to me, but I'm curious to know what does it mean to build generational wealth, and why is it important for people of color, from people from underrepresented groups, historically marginalized groups, minorities, whatever the phrase that you know are coining them as, or coining people as. But why is it so important for us to build generational wealth?
Yeah, no, it's a very important. I would say if we want change in the future, right, I got to start with us, right? How do we think about our finances? What does money represent to us? I view it as a tool and not an end goal. So it should be a tool, like to your point, to leave a legacy to your kids so they start better off when they become adults. And the same thing will trickle down, hopefully, to the next generation, your grandkids. So, you know, wealthy people have resources available to them so that their kids can have options. And so when you don't have wealth in the family, well, those options are zero or very few. So what I mean by that is that if you don't leave, you know, some asset or some money behind, right, for your kid, well, that kid is going to struggle through life, has to work and potentially fund his own education or work to fund his own business. Now, a lot of wealthy people, they have money and they also have businesses potentially. So, and they leave that business to the next generation and the next generation. And again, it gives you a better head start when you have those resources available for your kids and your grandkids to continue that trend of continue to generate wealth through the different generations. So how do you get there? Well, again, going back to Cher's point in terms of like saving money, so not spending recklessly, right? So Warren Buffett, you know, he's brilliant in terms of he started investing when he was 8 years old, and he's a billionaire. he's great. I was hoping I could meet him actually in Omaha when I went on a trip last month. But unfortunately, I run out of time. But he's someone who I look up to. So he says, if you buy things that you do not need, soon you will have to sell things that you need.
Uh-oh.
Right. So it's just to show you that sometimes we live like beyond our means. And so honestly, one of the things that I tell my clients is like, let's start with ground zero, or sometimes we start from negative in terms of a lot of people have debt. And we have to, come up with strategies on how to eliminate debt, and then start with a budget. And then, what is this budget going to do for us? And so it has to fund some of the things that we need to start building that wealth. So the importance here, I want to point that out because I want to highlight that if we don't think about generational wealth, the people that I help with, sometimes they're in negatives, or they're actually starting from negative than even from zero. And so how do you get there? You acquire assets, you invest the cash that you have, right, in different vehicles. You again live under a budget. And so again, I wanna recommend to people to read the Millionaire Next Door book, because that's an eye opener in terms of like, what do wealthy people do? What do they think about money? Where do they live? What do they drive? How do they dress? Do they buy a car just to show it off for people that they don't even like, right? Or do they save their money for the future and to leave a legacy? And building wealth over time for minorities, including business owners, is really important to start having a voice in society to say, hey, I also have money. Hey, I also have assets. And they can have a seat on the table in terms of making decisions for the community, for the country, for the world. So that's why it's important to tackle that topic early on.
Yeah, I'm so glad that Liz mentioned, just in general, just a reminder about the privilege that we do have by having this conversation and feeling that we have the options and the resources to kind of do some of these things that you're suggesting, right? Like to have these conversations. But it took me back when I barely could save $20 because my whole check was just for living, right? Like I needed to survive. And I also started to be reminiscent of how intentional my family had to be. I didn't have anybody to go talk to about this particular conversation because this is not the place in which people were using financial planners at the time. And so I didn't have a place to go to have it. But it still caused me a little bit of anxiety and fear right now, just thinking about how much I could, like, what would I have to sacrifice, or what would I have to do, or to put up about enough money or to make something like this happen. And then I funneled that down to my age when I was like, I couldn't put $20 away because I was check to check. And, I had overspent, right? Had a great weekend once I started making money. And I was like, ooh, let me look at this overdraft. Oh no, what did I do wrong? And I mean, all of those emotions are coming up, and that was my hesitation. So my question really is like, what stops our communities from investing in financial planning? Because right now I feel the fear coming up, right? And I feel like, what do I have to let go? Like I'm feeling all these emotions, and I know that you probably experienced this with other clients.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so thanks for sharing that. I think we can all relate to that at some point in our lives where, we had to scramble just to find some dollars to buy food.
To put gas in the car.
Put gas in the car and then make a decision. I can tell you, from my personal story, I used to work with my mom. I mean, I did a lot of things. I sold candy when I was a kid. I helped my dad. I helped my mom with Avon products, setting up and stuff like that. I sold vegetables and fruits. And I just had to find resources. I tell my kid, he's into video games. And I used to charge other kids to pass certain phase that was difficult. And so I used to charge them a fee. And then I just hang out at the local arcade, and spend the whole day just, just waiting for the opportunity for someone to say, can you pass this stage for me? And I'll be like, yep, all right, it's going to be whatever, 5 pesos or whatever that was.
Wow.
And make some money that way.
Talk about the entrepreneurial mindset.
Okay. I love the hustle. I love the grind.
I told you, hustler right there.
I love
it. I shouldn't discourage my kid from having his lemonade stand there because he's ready.
Oh, no,
he's like,
absolutely.
I'm like, what's your business plan?
I keep telling her to let him have the lemonade stand. Like, come on, I need some power here, Enrique, because I keep saying, let him do it. You need to have this entrepreneurial spirit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Here's what I'm going to say about leaving a legacy, right? So it's great. We want to leave a legacy. We want to have, assets. We want to leave cash behind. We want to leave some investments, death benefits and things like that for them to start at a better spot in the race, right? However, we also have the responsibility as parents to teach them that, money is earned, not just given to them, and that they have to also work hard for their own money and to continue that legacy, right? Because the worst thing that can happen is that if we leave a legacy, but they don't know about how to manage their money, they're all going to waste it in things, that are going to be not beneficial at the end of the day. So we just got to be careful around that part in terms of showing our kids how to be smart with their finances as well, and living that legacy with them. It's a big responsibility, so they just have to understand what that is. But going back to your question, I think it's the lack of I think it's a lack of education and opportunities. To be honest, I think. They definitely didn't teach me in school how to be smart with my money. I mean, there were some economic, classes, but, they try to explain the stock markets and stuff like that. And it was pretty complicated. I mean, the complexity of it also didn't make it easy for us, right? I think we just want to get through school and be done with it. However, I think the educational system needs to do better in terms of managing money. What's savings, how much should you save, what's investing, like what are some of the opportunities to start early on and have that, those resources and those tools available. I am actually going to do a college planning workshop in next month in Texas. And so I'm going to teach some of these things to the parents and also to the kids so they can start planning for college. But at the same time, I'm going to snuck in some nuggets there to prepare financially. And so, again, bringing the education to the community is one of the things that I'm most passionate about. And so, but I would say just lack of education and opportunity. And if the parents didn't have that, what are they going to pass on to the kids? And if the kids don't hear it in school, well, then we have no one really to rely on to give us that education. That's why I do what I do, family per family. Do that education, which is the number one priority for me. Trust in the financial markets, I would say, because I think is generated from the lack of education and understanding of the complexity. And so I always try to break it down to my clients, like all this jargon, let's put it aside. This is what you need to know. And just kind of make it very simple for them.
So using like more accessible language, more inclusive language, because so one of the articles, and I think I shared it with Sharon and you, Enrique, that really prompted me from this conversation, because I've been trying to figure out like, okay, why don't I know these things? Like I've been working in corporate America for a long time. Like I feel like I'm so behind in this generational wealth personally. And this article, it's called The Color of Wealth, and it talked about, our communities, our historically marginalized communities. This is so, let me go back a little bit, because our census from 2020 came out and it said, we are a diverse nation, right? Our people of color, our historically marginalized communities, they're going to be the dominant community. And in 10 years' time, what is America going to look like, right? But when you talk about generational wealth, and when we talk about how this isn't something that's very prominent in our communities, in our Latino communities and Black communities, I can only speak to the Latin community, but this article talked about that one in four Black Americans live in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. 1 in 6 Latinos live in high poverty neighborhoods compared to the 1 in 13 white Americans. So when you think about building generational wealth and you think about people being kind of in these high poverty communities and not having the resources available to them, how then do we build wealth? How do we get started, and do we have an opportunity in the next 10 years to change that narrative?
Yeah, no, and that's a good point, right? But I think, and I do recognize that equity gap in these communities that you're mentioning. It starts with us, right? It starts with us in terms of educating those communities. Financial education is key, because if they don't know any better, right, they'll continue to do the same thing over and over and over. Again, it's a cycle that if it's not broken, it will repeat itself. And now, because as you mentioned, the 2020 census, minorities are becoming more abundant and sort of taking over the U.S. Well, that's fine, but now we have to be even more intentional in terms of financial education and getting our things in order in our communities, in our families. And it really starts with us, meaning in our own family, educating our kids and making sure that we pass on the little that we know in terms of finances. I mean, the other thing is, like, Google is accessible to everybody nowadays. It was an issue like many years ago where if you didn't know, well, you were out of luck. But now there's so many resources, so much information out there that's readily accessible for people to tap into, right? And again, if there's the workshop that I'm going to have next month, to tap into those resources as well from a community perspective, do more of that. And for us who have more knowledge about the topic, to engage with nonprofit organizations, to spread the word, right? Now, the other thing about this is that we have to be, again, responsible with our finances. We have to have a budget. We have to show people that if we want to achieve things in life, we want to change the needle or move the needle in the right direction and make progress, right? That we have to make some sacrifices. Back to Shara's point, in terms of sacrificing something for the better and for the future. Well, that has to resonate with people in those communities as well. So they want to have they need to want the change, essentially, including with some of my clients when I work with them. Is it how bad do you want this, or how bad do you want to achieve these goals, right? And sometimes people are not ready, and sometimes people don't want to. Sometimes people are scared and they're afraid. But it starts with us really to start moving that needle and become more aware of the financial education that we all need, essentially. So more community service programs from the government, right, from local, state, and the U.S. government to bring that education to those communities. Now, why there isn't enough resources? Well, that's another topic, but they're limited. Essentially, you have to really look, or have people like us give those workshops to those communities. So.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned this, because one of the things that I think oftentimes, like you talked about, oftentimes the word of mouth, sharing information through families and communities, I definitely learned a lot. I remember my uncle set me aside when I went to college and gave me a book. He was like, I had to spend, and he's an accountant. He has an accounting background, probably even finance background, but he was just like, I had to spend some time thinking about how I was going to make this book work. He was like, it wasn't the complexity of the book. He was like, how do I make this book work for me? Right. Because I can't really use every aspect of the pieces right now, maybe in my life, but going back to the planning piece of like finances, like we really don't spend a lot of word on the planning part. It's like always so immediate, like what I need to do right now, but also what do I want to do and what I need to do and what's those triggers as I go through life, or my income increase, or the location I change, or my age has changed, or, I have a child, or I have to care for a loved one as a caregiver role. Like, what are those things that are like now are the triggers that I need to go back to some of those places, whether it's Google or a book or my benefits department or whatever the case may be, or my friend group and ask questions, or Facebook group and say, something has changed here, or a signal has changed here, and I need to be thinking of things differently. Because when he told me that, he was like, he's like, this stuff will start to make sense in certain parts of your life. And you just need to keep going back to this book. And I'm not going to lie. Like at first I was like, thanks. I appreciate you. I hope you put $20 in here. Cause once again, I was broke at the time. But then it was like, he was right. He was like, okay, so when I got my first job, it's like that 401k match. It's like 401k. I don't want to give y'all this money to match what? That's a lot of money. But then it's like, okay, you're crazy if you don't. That's free money. Then it's like, oh, I should be thinking about, putting, 30 to 40% away for savings so that I can pay off these loans or do these types of things, or, be able to have a great trip versus like just spending it all. Like, okay, I'm going on a trip, girl, and I'll figure it out when I get back, right? Trying to float a bill or something, right? Like it was just those little things. He was right. It's like a manual. It's not you got to do all these things right now. But I love the fact that you said, Google it, get some resources, use your network. Because honestly, I until I gotten older, more confident, I didn't even know we were supposed to talk about money. Like I thought it was like a secret. Like when I heard my grandparents and my mom and them, they kept that stuff so tight. Like until I went to college, I did not know how much money my mom made, like by hour or by salary. Like I had no context.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something that even our culture and Latino community, we don't share. Actually, we we don't talk about work that much. We don't talk about aspirations or what we want to do. We don't talk about how much, definitely not how much money we make. We don't share those things at all. Like, therefore, the financial education topic is sort of like thrown in under the rug, right? And so, which is pretty sad, because if you don't know these things, or at least bring up these topics, how can you get better? How can you seek help from someone? Hey, am I getting paid, enough? How does it compare against, what you're getting paid over there? Maybe, you should help me out finding a better job, or like, do you have any openings there? So that community in terms of financial education is non-existent in our culture. And so that's one of the things that I'm passionate about, just destroying those things that sort of prevent us to move forward. A lot of my close friends and family, the conversations are starting to change in terms of, how do we spend our money versus how do we invest our money? How do we plan for the future versus, what am I going to do with this $1,000 truck payment? And so sometimes we return that truck because it's in the best interest of that family, because they want to achieve other goals, because they have different values, because they want to fund a business, right? But there's something that's holding us back to achieve those things. And sometimes, a lot of the times, is debt that we don't need via whatever that is. Now, there is some good debt, like, mortgage loans and stuff like that, because you have some collateral. But in general terms, there is some things that hold us back. But yeah, it's definitely something nobody wants to talk about. And so sort of changing that mindset, slowly but gradually, that's another, way we can actually change our culture. And because we now are a big majority in the United States, that we have the responsibility to start thinking about how to accumulate wealth for us and then for the people that are coming behind us. So
Wow, I really love that. And I think for me, and we're getting kind of close to our end time, and I think that's just kind of a perfect way to end. And one of the things that we do for our listeners is we have a moment of reflection based on like everything that you've brought up to the table. And for me, it's like, what is your, like, for the listeners, or for you, Cher, or Enrique too, is like, what is your relationship with money and or wealth? And how do you feel about it? Because I know for me, personally, I had to reconcile that relationship with money, where I was very reactory with my wealth or my money. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to have the good time. I'm going to book that vacation because, YOLO. I want that car. I mean, I remember when I turned 18, I got a job, $8 an hour. I was like, ooh, I'm rich. I'm going to go buy me a brand new car. I didn't need a brand new car. And it was like, and my best friend and I talk about this a lot because we have very similar backgrounds. And, money wasn't discussed in our homes. We were both first generation Americans. And we always think about, if we had these conversations early on, like super early, imagine the place that we would be in right now. And personally for me, I mean, I went through a moment of debt. In order to get my college education, I had to get student loans. And it's like, is that necessary? Do we need to like have and I know I'm probably going to get a lot of like feedback on this, but I don't feel like it's necessary for our college kids and our young adults to come out of college with debt. You're already like, don't you want to start your kids like just, I know many people do it, but do we have to do this? Is this the narrative that we have to do? It's not like, oh, because I had to do it, you have to do it too. It's like, can't we change the narrative of that and the student debt? And one, is it like the resources that are available to our students, as well as the education and the knowledge, and how we then, how are we comfortable and what is our relationship with that wealth? So I want to leave the listeners and everyone with kind of that question on, what is your relationship with money and or wealth?
Yeah, I think this is one of these vulnerable moments, but I have a love-hate with about money in this particular conversation, right? I love the fact that I do get options and I can be able to influence different options, not just for myself, but for my family and for my friends, because of what I've been able to do. But the less loving part, maybe hate is a too strong of a word, but the less loving part around this conversation is really around the fear and anxiety that comes up about doing the right thing, right? Like, it goes back to like, there's a lot of pressure, and I can't say that it's like almost a generational pressure to an individual pressure, because I'm that person. Like, I now have some new tools and I want to share it and do my best at it. But then there's a community pressure to say, now that I have this information, how do I get it out? How do I share with my family? How do I look out for them? And I've made some bad choices, right, early on, where it was like, oh, I'm just going to come in and help. Right? I'm going to be the means in which if something comes up, I'm going to provide my money or my resources. And those things work until you are then back into a situation and that relationship between people or others start to change, right? Or in general, when I was young and they're like, oh, you got a great job, girl, you may not, oh, you too big for us right now. Like, and this was like friends, like people around me would be like, oh, you got money, now you think you better than the right thing. And that wasn't true. And it was like, I never changed who I am, but now this is this thing attached to me that has nothing to do with actually who I am or my values. It's one of those things where I really am trying to stay skilled up, but I can't lie and say that the anxiety of like making sure I'm making the right investments and doing the right things for myself and family and my future endeavors in life. But it's also that piece where it's like, I want to make sure that it doesn't stay in one place. So I really want to change this relationship with it, right? And I got help. I think, Enrique, when you said, get somebody, whether in the community, I started asking for help. I started telling my friends, like, I don't know, like, how are you budgeting for this trip? What else are you doing? I mean, you're planning for kids. What are you doing financially? Like, how do y'all think about that? How do you think about college? Like, I've gotten more vulnerable in that space. And also I've gotten a financial planner to help. Right. So I think that's the part where it's like, we're trying, but I still have this really uncomfortable feeling around it because I'm always thinking it's going to go away. Like it's that scarcity. I know what it is to be working for. So it's not that I don't have the means to if that happens and fight out, get all those things that got me and my family, like to the place of like, we're going to do better and we're going to make a better situation. But once again, it's something about that scarcity piece that always kind of plays into this conversation. And it's always like, I want to do the right thing. So I don't take a step back, not just for myself, but for others, but that believe in what it is that we're moving through as a community or a family or friends. Right. So I'm still processing it, I guess.
Absolutely. And so it is pretty scary. You know, when I meet with people, they're scared to even talk about it. I mean, everything we talk about is 100% confidential. But it's just maybe the first time they actually talk about money ever in their lives. And so it is, you're not alone, by the way. So it is something like a taboo sort of thing. And so when we do financial planning with those individuals, we have checkpoints throughout the year. And so we check in progress to see, okay, how are we doing based on the plan? And so people get excited when they're hitting some of those milestones and we celebrate them. And look, the financial plan also has to allow for things that you enjoy in life, travel, right? To give to the community, charity, things that you enjoy in life. Because again, it goes back to the value. So if you enjoy a family trip because you want to create bondage or friends, and you want to get to know each other and you want to have a good time with those individuals, it's in the plan. Believe me, it's in the financial plan. So it's not 100% sacrifice. It's actually something that works for the individual or the family. So just to help in that space of like fear, anxiety about actually doing and going through with it. But the other thing I was going to mention, when you start accumulating wealth, it's not that you change so much, it's how people perceive you, right? And you can't really control that part. You can't really control that. So I would say control what you can control the controllables, and then let go of the rest, because somebody will always have an opinion about you.
Yeah. And I have one question just for the group. And I know that we're at time, we're getting close to time, but how do you all address the conversation about the will? Like, we build all this wealth, we got all this stuff, you know, this money in the pockets, right? Like, we're going to talk aspirationally. Well, how do y'all have this conversation? I'll be honest with you. Like, I feel more comfortable having a conversation with other people, but when it got to me doing my will, I was like, ooh. I mean, I'm talking about my eyebrows is hot, but I was like, ooh. I was walking around like drinking water. Am I healthy? Like, it went through this whole mental like, oh, these are my last days, right? Like, I went through this weird thing, and then when I sat down to do it, which it wasn't that hard, right, in those types of things, but I actually I got really emotional about it because I felt like, to your point about celebrating where you are, it was like, oh my gosh, I have some things that I did do that was good decisions that now I do get to create something that allows my family and those in it. Because I ain't telling y'all who it is, by the way, all y'all family friends listening out there. I'm living this full life. FYI, I'm living all this full life. But those types of things, when I finished it, I actually cried because I was like, I'm leaving something. Like, I have something that.
And weren't you so proud of yourself? And were you?
Yes.
Yeah. So like, Cher, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had a very similar thing. And my husband and my best friend are both like, we keep our accountability. And to your point, like, I started reaching out to people and, you know, like being comfortable with sharing that vulnerability with other people. And then they both, my best friend and my husband, they both kind of every week send me little reminders and like, you know, like, this is our total wealth. And when we did the will too, like when we had that, we had to do it because we have kids. And so we put kind of our estate planning together, and I was like, and I'm like, okay, let me plan and then I started thinking about Enrique and like what he's told me. And I'm like, no, I got to keep it there because I'm building generational wealth. But it was like, it's like that kind of reminder when you see it holistically. And to Enrique's point, like, you control what you can control and think about for you and what you want to do and not the outwardly, right? Because we tend to, as a society, we tend to worry about other people's perceptions and we look outwardly a lot. And it's like, no, let's look inwardly and let's figure out why this is preventing us individually from moving forward. And like, again, looking at our relationship with money and thinking about like, what do we want that to look like? How do we want that to look like? And I love, Enrique, your kind of tie into the values of it and saying it's okay. Like travel is something really important to my family and I. So we just accommodate our budgets to allow for our travel. We're huge Disney lovers, so and it's not cheap to go to Disney. So, but that is something really important for us to do. And, for a while, I felt really guilty. I felt really guilty for traveling, for taking our kids to Disney when they were very little. We go to Disney without our kids too, y'all. That's okay. But I felt guilty. It's like, no, I'm accommodating my budget for this. What I'm worried about, what's holding me back, is other people's perception of what I'm doing with my money. And when as soon as I got away from that, like it just kind of like all went okay.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing that, because that's a vulnerable part of us, right? Thinking that we're doing something wrong because we're enjoying ourselves and with the money that we make. And again, there's flexibility and has to be flexibility in your financial plan to allow for those things that make you ultimately happy and circle back to your values, right? Like I said in the beginning, money, I see it as a tool and not a goal. So money should allow you to get from point A to B. So what is that? Point A, where you are, point B, where you want to be. So if you want to build stronger relationship with your spouse, absolutely take that Napa Valley trip, take that, trip to the Key West, or because that will create something that is intangible, but it's very important for you and your husband or your friend or whatever, whoever's in your life that's really important to you. So it is a tool to allow you to do those things. Where it becomes a problem, I think, is when you spend a lot of money in one area and you're neglecting other areas that are really important and crucial, wealth accumulation, for instance, or sending your kids to college or paying for that wedding. And so, like I said, we allocate your income, your assets to hit all of your goals, not just one or two. And so, again, through money, which is a tool, and again, is not a goal. So,
And how about wills? Like, how do you have the conversation, in at least in your space?
The will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wills and trusts, pretty important to put in place, because you want, again, going back to the control bit, you want to be able to control leaving something behind to your kids, to somebody that you love, whether it's another family member or friend. Those are important things that we put in place as well for clients. We do estate planning as well, and we don't necessarily write the trust, but we connect them with lawyers that can. But it is absolutely a key point or a key ingredient into the financial planning, leaving that legacy behind, making sure that we do it in the proper ways. So definitely something that we recommend, and I even have it with my family. So.
And I think, Shara, to your point, I think when you don't have those things in place, like for leaving your family behind, like once you pass on, like it is a headache. I had that experience when my father passed away, and there was no estate planning, there was no will, there was no contingencies to even be able to bury him. And so we had to pull money out of our savings account to be able to do that. And so that was something that was so traumatic for us and our family. And I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. So as soon as I had kids, I was like, this is it. We're doing an estate planning.
Right. And the other thing is, like, via trust, like you can bypass the probate process, which is like getting into the courts and then having fights like who owns what. So you alleviate all of that just for, planning ahead of time. I mean, unfortunately, something that's going to happen either way, why not prepare for it?
Well, Enrique, I mean, I know we took up a lot of your time. This is a good, I mean, I think we could keep going, really. Like, there's so much. I mean, I got questions galore.
I know, we got to let them go. We got to let them go. We can ask all we can ask. I'm telling you, I was just about to like, well, let me go and get my notebook because we about to work. Okay.
Enrique, we really appreciate you coming on here and trusting us with your story and trusting us with this process. We really appreciate it. For our listeners, we are on Instagram. Follow us at More Than Words Podcast. We have our webpage too. morethanwordspodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We also have a Facebook group, which there's exclusive content and other events and things for the group in particular. And we'll post this episode on everywhere you can find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we're looking at other platforms too. Don't worry, we're getting there. We're getting there, Android users. We're getting there. But thank you so much, Enrique, again for this conversation. I think it's so critical, and it's such an important time to be talking about money and what our relationship looks like for that.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Again,
and Enrique, is there anything you want to share with the group before we leave, for our listeners, before we head out? Like any way to contact you or anything you want to promote so that people know how to get with you since you have things coming up?
Sure. Read the book. Read the book of The Millionaire Next Door as a starting point, just to see what wealth looks like and wealthy people. What do they do? Where do they hang out? How do they think about money? And obviously, if you need some help in putting a plan together, or at least having a conversation about it, informal or formal, you can call my office. Number is 281-699-9520, or shoot me an email, Enrique, ENRIQUE, Basañez, BASANEZ, @thrivent.com. So we can always chat about any financial topics or just life advice in general. I'm always available to help out. So it's been a pleasure to be here with you guys and spending time and having so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put all your information on the post as well too. So if people need to contact you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Friday. See you next week.
Bye.